In a striking move, the Pentagon has ordered Navy warships to patrol waters near the U.S.-Mexico border, signaling a dramatic escalation in border security. The USS Gravely, a guided missile destroyer, has already set sail for the region, an area usually patrolled by the Coast Guard. This deployment marks a shift from traditional law enforcement to a show of military strength, with a second destroyer soon joining from the West Coast. The presence of these warships is meant to send a clear message. The U.S. is ramping up efforts to control its maritime borders and combat illicit activities. The Department of Defense frames this as a necessary step in a broader security operation, reflecting the administration's intensified focus on the border. Using Navy destroyers for border patrol is unprecedented, raising questions about the mission's scope and the long-term role of military assets in domestic security. As these ships take up their new posts, the world is watching to see how this bold move will reshape the security landscape along the southern border. The difference between a Navy destroyer and a Coast Guard cutter is stark. Cutters enforce the law, but destroyers are built for war. The USS Gravely, armed with up to 96 missiles, brings overwhelming firepower and advanced surveillance to the border, far beyond the Coast Guard's usual capabilities. Deploying two destroyers for border security is highly unusual, blurring the line between military operations and law enforcement. This move shifts the mission from policing to a military-style operation, fundamentally changing the region's security dynamics. Recent comments from defense officials, including the possibility of strikes into Mexico, add gravity to the destroyer's presence. With Tomahawk missiles on board, these ships introduce new strategic options and a latent threat of military action. The U.S. presence at the border is no longer just about patrols. It's about projecting power and altering the calculus for everyone in the region. Despite their firepower, the destroyer's immediate mission is to support the fight against transnational crime. On board, Coast Guard law enforcement detachments, LEDETs, will work alongside Navy crews, combining military might with law enforcement expertise. The destroyer's advanced sensors can spot suspicious vessels far from shore, while LEDETs handle interdictions and arrests. This joint approach targets drug traffickers who use fast boats and semi-submersibles to evade detection. By disrupting smuggling routes at sea, the mission aims to cut off revenue for criminal organizations and reduce the flow of illegal drugs. What's new is the speed and focus of this deployment, placing high-value military assets directly off the U.S.-Mexico border. The Pentagon's prioritization of this region signals its elevation to a top-tier operational theater. The border is now treated with the same urgency as global hotspots where the Navy combats transnational threats. The destroyers are just one part of a rapidly expanding military presence at the border. The Pentagon has steadily increased troop deployments, now numbering over 8,000 active-duty personnel, plus thousands of National Guard members. Troops from the Army, Marines, and Air Force provide engineering, aviation, and surveillance support, transforming the border into a major domestic military operation. The Army's 10th Mountain Division now oversees much of the mission, formalizing command and control. This level of involvement far exceeds previous support missions, signaling a long-term strategic commitment. What began as temporary support has evolved into a semi-permanent military presence, institutionalizing the Pentagon's role in border security. The border is now one of the most militarized zones in the country, with daily operations reshaped by this sustained footprint. Alongside naval patrols, the military is expanding its authority on land with new designated zones along the border. In these zones, troops can temporarily detain migrants, a significant shift from their usual support roles. This move helps overwhelmed Border Patrol agents by allowing soldiers to hold individuals until federal law enforcement can take over. Nearly 12,000 troops are now stationed along the border, engaged in tasks from building barriers to providing medical support. Their visible presence underscores the administration's commitment to sealing the border against illegal crossings and trafficking. The scale of this deployment rivals some overseas conflict zones, reflecting a systematic strategy to make the military a central pillar of border security. The military's role is no longer just backup. It's now indispensable to the administration's approach. In a further escalation, the U.S. and Mexico have agreed to begin synchronized patrols along their shared border. This new level of cooperation moves beyond intelligence sharing to active, coordinated operations, aiming to close gaps exploited by smugglers and migrants. The joint framework is a major diplomatic and military achievement, reflecting a shared understanding of the threats posed by criminal organizations. For the U.S. military, Mexican cooperation enhances situational awareness and resource efficiency. The recent surge of troops, deployment of warships, and joint patrols represent an unprecedented militarization of border security. These actions are part of a comprehensive strategy, not isolated decisions, and signal the administration's view of the border as a national emergency. The expanded military presence may become permanent, fundamentally changing the relationship between the military and law enforcement. The U.S.-Mexico border is now a central theater for American military power, with decisions made today shaping the region's future for years to come.